There are lessons that never grow old. They only need to be remembered at the right time, when you're tired of holding everything together, when you look strong on the outside but feel overwhelmed inside, or when you finally realize that peace doesn't come from doing more, controlling more, or proving more, but from pausing and understanding what truly sustains you each day. This video isn't about flashy success or how to become unbreakable in some loud, dramatic way. It's about an inward journey where you learn to listen to yourself, protect the quiet energy you often ignore, and stand steady even when no one sees how hard you're trying. If any part of you longs for clarity, stability, and something deeper than the chaos around you, you're in the right place. Let these timeless lessons remind you, you don't need noise to be powerful. You don't need attention to be strong. If what I'm sharing speaks to you, consider subscribing so you won't miss future content designed to help you strengthen yourself from within. And leave a comment below. What's something in your life right now that's pulling you back to your inner world? I read every comment and would truly love to hear your story. 1. Learn to choose presence over control. There was a morning not long ago when I found myself standing in line at the pharmacy behind an elderly woman fumbling through her purse for a prescription slip. She looked overwhelmed and the line wasn't moving. I glanced at the clock. My breath shortened. My chest tightened. My mind started spinning, calculating how late I'd be, what I'd say to excuse it, how this could have been avoided if she had just moved faster. The desire to control the moment crept in like a reflex. But in that moment, something shifted. I realized the only thing I was really doing was exhausting myself. My frustration wasn't making the line move. It wasn't helping her. It was only dragging me further away from the kind of person I wanted to be. We live in a culture obsessed with control. We try to control schedules, outcomes, conversations, other people's opinions, and even the weather. We're conditioned to believe that if we can just tweak enough variables, the world will bend to our will. But the more we chase control, the more we lose the one thing that actually gives us strength: presence. The ability to be fully here, now, without needing to reshape the moment into something more convenient or more comfortable. That's where real emotional strength begins. Not in getting your way, but in learning to stay with what is. Presence doesn't mean passivity. It's not giving up or pretending everything is fine. It's the opposite of surrendering. It's stepping into the moment with your full awareness, refusing to be yanked around by your need to control what you can't. When you're present, you become the one choosing how to respond instead of reacting on autopilot. You start to notice what's actually happening in your body and mind, rather than being lost in the stories you're telling yourself about what should be happening. That awareness is the gateway to inner peace. It's how you start reclaiming your clarity, your calm, your authority over your own internal world. The truth is, most of the mental noise we deal with every day, the overthinking, the irritability, the exhaustion, doesn't come from reality. It comes from resisting reality, from the internal war between what's happening and what we want instead. That tension eats away at your energy, leaving you scattered, drained, and reactive. But when you choose presence over control, you break the cycle. You stop feeding the illusion that peace can be found in perfect conditions. You realize peace comes when you stop needing conditions to be perfect. This shift isn't dramatic, it starts small. The next time you're running late, or someone cancels on you, or plans fall apart, place your hand over your chest. Take 3 steady breaths, and do nothing. Don't reach for your phone. Don't rant. Don't fix. Just breathe. This simple act of mental clarity is not weakness. It's self-mastery. It's a form of discipline that quiets emotional reactivity and trains your nervous system to remain grounded. That pause, that intentional breath, is where your emotional resilience is born. When you learn to stay grounded in the now, you're no longer tossed around by the chaos around you. You don't react to every trigger, every inconvenience, every unmet expectation. Instead, you respond with intention. You act from a place of calm confidence rather than fear or frustration. Over time, this becomes your default, your new normal. You become mentally strong not because life got easier, but because you stopped trying to control everything and started learning to live deeply with what is. That's how quiet confidence grows. That's how emotional discipline forms. That's how you begin to build unshakable strength, not from controlling the storm, but by becoming the calm inside it. 2. Protect the energy that builds you. It took me months to admit it, but I dreaded hearing from my friend Mark. Every time his name lit up my screen late at night, it wasn't relief or connection I felt. It was tension. He'd message me at 11 p.m., sometimes past midnight, with a fresh complaint, another crisis, always seeking comfort but never ready to listen. At first, I thought I was being a good friend, staying available, staying kind. But over time, I started noticing how heavy I felt after each conversation, how my own sleep suffered, how I carried his weight long after the screen went dark. One evening, as my chest tightened at the sound of a message ping, it hit me. I was draining my emotional reserves to maintain a connection that didn't nourish me. I wasn't being supportive. I was slowly abandoning myself. We often talk about building inner strength as if it's only about action, doing more, pushing harder, becoming tougher. But real emotional resilience isn't just about what you can carry. It's about knowing what not to carry anymore. Energy, like time, is limited. And just like you wouldn't hand over your paycheck to someone who keeps wasting it, you shouldn't give your emotional energy to people or situations that deplete you without ever giving back. The strongest people aren't those who take on everything. They're the ones who've learned the quiet discipline of protecting what sustains them. There's a dangerous belief buried deep in our culture that being a good person means always being available, always answering the call, always saying yes. But the truth is, kindness without boundaries is not compassion, it's self-neglect. When you constantly give without pause, you teach others that your energy is endless, that they don't need to be careful with your time, your feelings, or your space. And over time, you stop recognizing yourself, not because you're weak, but because you've poured so much into everyone else that there's nothing left for you. The real shift happens when you realize that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. You start seeing that emotional resilience isn't just about weathering storms. It's about knowing which storms you were never meant to stand in. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to step away quietly, not to punish someone, not to prove anything, but to return to yourself. Because if your energy is constantly hijacked by guilt, obligation, or fear of disappointing others, then your strength will never have a chance to grow. It will be scattered, thin, fragile. So what does protecting your energy actually look like? It looks like noticing how you feel after certain conversations. It looks like pausing before responding to a message that makes your stomach twist. It looks like giving yourself permission to say no without explanation. It looks like understanding that emotional boundaries are a form of mental strength, not distance. And most of all, it looks like recognizing the spaces and people that help you feel grounded, not drained, and choosing them more often. The next time you feel that quiet fatigue, the kind that isn't from work or lack of sleep, but from overgiving, stop and write down what or who made you feel that way. Be honest. You don't have to confront anyone or explain yourself. You just have to name it. Naming what drains you is the first step in choosing what builds you. And once you make that choice, once you decide that your energy matters, you'll start seeing life differently. Your days will have more clarity, your mind more space, and your actions more power. Real confidence doesn't come from how much you can handle. It comes from how wisely you protect what keeps you strong. 3. Let go of the need to be seen. You've probably had one of those days. You wake up early even though you didn't feel like it. You go for a run. You skip the distraction. You focus on your work. You overcome the inner voice begging you to take it easy. You do what's right, not because anyone is watching, but because something inside you said, "Today we don't quit." And yet at the end of the day, no one notices. No message, no applause, not even a simple, "good job." A part of you wants to shout, "I tried so hard today." But the moment fades and you realize, maybe it's okay that no one saw. We've been raised in a world that equates value with visibility. If it's not posted, it didn't happen. If no one reacts, it doesn't count. But the truth is, some of the most meaningful victories in life are quiet. You don't see them in highlight reels or hear them talked about in group chats. They happen when no one's around. When you forgive someone who hurt you, not because they asked, but because you were tired of carrying the pain. When you stop yourself mid-argument and choose silence, not out of weakness, but out of emotional control. When you say no to something tempting, because you promised yourself growth over gratification. These moments don't ask for attention. They ask for honesty. They ask for alignment with who you're trying to become. Letting go of the need to be seen isn't about hiding, it's about healing. It's about finding the kind of self-worth that doesn't fluctuate with feedback, the kind that doesn't collapse without validation. Because when your value is tied to how others respond, you're never truly free. You chase recognition like a drug. You start to perform instead of live. You choose what looks admirable over what feels authentic. And slowly, you drift from yourself. But when you begin to separate your worth from the eyes of others, something shifts. You become rooted, clear. You start choosing actions not because they'll be praised, but because they're right. You stop leaking energy trying to impress, and you begin investing it into who you're becoming. This is how quiet confidence grows. It doesn't scream. It doesn't seek the spotlight. It builds slowly, moment by moment, choice by choice. And the more you honor those unseen efforts, the stronger your foundation becomes. You begin to trust yourself, not because others say you're doing well, but because you've watched yourself show up again and again, even when it was hard. That's not performance, that's integrity. So what do you do with these private wins? How do you hold them without needing to display them? Simple. You pause, you breathe, you write it down. Not for likes, for remembrance. You make tea, you take a walk, you sit in silence and smile, not because someone clapped, but because you know, deep down, you showed up for yourself today. That's the kind of success that doesn't fade, because it was never borrowed from anyone else's approval. It came from within. The next time you catch yourself reaching for your phone to share something that felt powerful, ask yourself, is this moment asking to be seen or to be felt? If it's the latter, let it stay sacred. Protect it. Let it live inside you, untouched by judgment, untouched by performance. Because in that space you grow, not for show, but for real. And that's where true strength lives. Quiet, rooted, unshakable. 4. Ask yourself better questions. If I asked you, what did you get done this week? You'd probably have a quick answer. Meetings attended, emails sent, errands checked off, maybe even a few workouts squeezed in. But if I asked, what did you miss this week? Because you were too busy, the room might fall quiet. Because that's not a question we often hear. It doesn't fit into to-do lists or calendar blocks. It digs deeper. It forces us to pause, not to measure productivity, but to face presence or the lack of it. And that, right there, is the power of a better question. It doesn't just extract information, it reveals the truth. Most people go through life answering shallow questions with shallow clarity. What's next? What's urgent? What will people think? But rarely do we stop to ask the questions that actually lead us somewhere meaningful. Why am I doing this? Does this align with who I'm becoming? What am I sacrificing without even realizing it? These are the kinds of questions that don't just shift our days, they shift our direction. Because when you change the questions you ask, you begin to change what you notice. You interrupt autopilot. You begin to live with intention instead of momentum. In today's world, where distraction is endless and noise never stops, clarity is no longer automatic. You have to work for it. And that work begins with the courage to question. Not with doubt, but with depth. The kind of questions that don't look for approval, but for alignment. The kind that don't aim for quick answers, but for honest ones. When was the last time you asked yourself, am I proud of how I showed up today? Or did I speak from truth, or just from habit? These aren't easy to answer, but they're worth sitting with, because the quality of your life isn't built from big breakthroughs. It's built from the quiet honesty of your daily decisions. Asking better questions isn't about fixing yourself. It's about uncovering the parts of you that already know the way, but have been buried under noise, expectations, and routines that don't belong to you. It's how you break cycles. It's how you stop shrinking for others. It's how you return to your true center, the place where your values live. And from there, you begin to navigate life not by default, but by design. This practice is simple, but not easy. It starts with awareness. At the end of your week, sit with yourself. Not your phone, not your task list, just you. Open a blank page. At the top, write, what did I live for this week? Don't try to make it sound impressive. Don't write what you think you should. Just tell the truth. Maybe you lived to get through it. Maybe you lived to avoid a feeling. Maybe you lived for a small moment of connection. Whatever it is, name it. Because of what you name, you can choose. And what you choose, you can change. There's a quiet strength in those who ask better questions. They don't need to have all the answers because they've learned to stay curious about themselves. They don't chase clarity like a finish line. They cultivate it like a habit. And over time, this habit becomes their edge. They move differently. They speak from inner alignment. They act from grounded clarity. And most of all, they don't let the world decide what matters most. They decide that for themselves. So if you want more calm, more direction, more emotional resilience, stop chasing the perfect answer. Start asking better questions, the ones that slow you down, the ones that pull you inward, the ones that demand you live, not just exist, because that's where growth begins. Not in what you know, but in what you're willing to ask. 5. Train yourself to pause before reacting. My neighbor, Mr. Allen, retired a few years ago and now lives alone. Every morning, he walks slowly down our street, stopping often to look at trees or simply feel the breeze. At first, I thought he was just passing the time. One day I asked him, "Why do you always walk like that, so unhurried?" He smiled and said, "I used to be short-tempered. I'd snap fast. But now I've trained myself. When I get upset, I walk before I speak." That sentence stayed with me. He didn't know it, but he was living one of the most powerful lessons in emotional self-mastery. It wasn't that his emotions disappeared. It was that he'd learned how to stop letting them lead. In a world where everything demands urgency, fast responses, instant opinions, quick fixes, we often forget that power isn't found in speed. It's found in the pause. That brief space between trigger and reaction is where your freedom lives. Anyone can react. Most people do. But to pause, to breathe before you speak, to wait before you decide, to feel without acting, is to reclaim control over your inner life. This isn't avoidance, it's discipline. It's the skill that separates those who are ruled by emotion from those who respond with calm clarity. Reacting quickly may feel satisfying in the moment. You say what you need to say, you fire back, you release the tension. But afterward, you're left with the debris, regret, miscommunication, damaged trust. And what you gain in urgency, you lose in depth. On the other hand, when you pause, even for a few seconds, you give yourself the gift of perspective. You allow the emotion to move through you instead of taking over. That's not weakness, that's a strength. That's mental resilience in real time. This pause doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't require silent retreats or hours of meditation. It just needs one decision: to interrupt the cycle. The next time someone says something that stings or a situation spirals out of control, place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. Count down slowly from 5 to 1. In that space, you create distance between the moment and the meaning. You shift from reacting out of old patterns to responding with intention. This is how you begin to build emotional stability, moment by moment, breath by breath. Over time, this practice becomes a habit. Your nervous system learns not to overheat so quickly. Your mind becomes trained to slow down under pressure. You stop jumping to conclusions and start choosing your direction. The calm you once had to force becomes natural. And the more you do it, the more you begin to notice a subtle shift. You're no longer afraid of intensity. You're no longer thrown off by tension, because you've built something inside that doesn't get shaken easily. This habit also helps protect your energy. Emotional reactions are expensive. They drain your focus, stir anxiety, and often pull you into patterns you've been trying to outgrow. But when you pause, you keep your peace intact. You stay centered. You stay in control of your story. And that stillness, that quiet resistance to being pulled in 100 directions, is what builds quiet confidence. Not because you never feel, but because you've learned how to feel fully without losing yourself. If there's one practice that separates those who live reactively from those who lead themselves well, it's this: the pause. It's small, but it's everything. It's the place where your strength rebuilds, where your clarity rises, where your choices shift. So the next time life pushes you toward a fast reaction, don't answer yet. Don't move yet. Just pause. That moment might just be the most powerful thing you do all day. 6. Reframe failure as your most honest teacher. Some years ago, I applied for a job I believed I was perfect for. The role matched my background, my passion, and everything I thought I was ready for. I wrote a heartfelt application, made it through multiple interviews, and waited. Then the rejection email came. No explanation, just a quiet, "We've gone with another candidate." I didn't tell anyone for weeks. The shame was private but heavy. I replayed every detail, what I said, how I answered, where I must have gone wrong. It wasn't just disappointment, it felt like a verdict on my worth. Until a friend, during a casual conversation, asked, "If you'd gotten that job, would you still be writing the way you do now?" That question hit something deeper than regret. It touched purpose. Because no, I wouldn't be writing every day. I wouldn't have discovered this rhythm, this clarity, this voice. That moment of loss wasn't the end. It was a necessary pause, a redirection I never would have chosen, but one I now wouldn't trade for anything. We often view failure as a final statement, as if it defines us. But failure is never the last word. It's a comma, not a period. It interrupts your plans, but only to introduce a better sentence. The truth is, failure teaches what success often hides. Success flatters, failure exposes. It shows you where your assumptions were weak, where your patterns break down, and where your inner structure needs reinforcement. Most of all, it reveals who you are when the applause fades, when no one is watching, when nothing goes as planned, and when the only person left to believe in you is you. There's a kind of emotional resilience that only failure can build. You can't access it through comfort. You can't read about it or hear it in advice. You have to walk through it, uncertain, unsteady, and unwilling at first. But eventually, you see what it's trying to show you, that your value isn't in the outcome, it's in the way you rise after it, in the way you look inward instead of outward, in the way you stop chasing approval and start building clarity, decision by decision. Most people fear failure not because it hurts, but because they believe it erases progress. But the opposite is true. Failure clarifies. It strips away illusions. It tells you exactly what doesn't work, so you can stop wasting energy pretending it does. You don't need to romanticize failure, you just need to stop running from it. Because once you face it, you begin to see that it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to shape you, not into someone perfect, but into someone whole. Try this. Think of a failure you still carry. Write it down, not to dwell, but to reframe. Underneath it, finish this sentence. Because of this, I learned. Don't rush. Let the answer come naturally. You might be surprised how much strength lives in that memory. Strength that was always there, just hidden under shame or regret. When you stop seeing failure as something to escape and start treating it as a guide, you take back your power. You stop tying your worth to results. You begin to live with a mindset built not on fear but on truth. What matters most is how you respond. Not with panic, but with presence. Not with blame, but with awareness. Every time you choose to reflect instead of react, you gain something. Success can never teach depth. And it's in that depth that real self-mastery begins. Because it's not about avoiding failure. It's about turning it into a foundation. One you can build on. One that won't crack under pressure. One that holds you steady as you keep moving forward, clearer than before. 7. Build a daily ritual that grounds you. For a long time, I believed that emotionally strong people had some hidden advantage, more energy, more motivation, more willpower. But then I moved into a building where my upstairs neighbor, a retired man in his late 60s, taught me something without ever saying a word. Every morning at the same time, he'd prepare a small cup of tea, clear the tiny table on his balcony, and sit quietly for about 10 minutes. No phone, no newspaper, no rush, just silence. I asked him once why he did it. He looked up, smiled, and said, "I don't start my day, I return to it." That sentence rewired something in me. You see, we often think strength comes from big breakthroughs, from pushing harder, from loud wins. But more often, it comes from one small, repeated act done with full presence. A ritual, not driven by pressure, but by clarity. Something that isn't about productivity or performance, but about reclaiming yourself before the world pulls you in 50 directions. In a life that constantly drains our attention, that one grounding habit becomes the anchor that holds you steady. You don't need something elaborate. It doesn't have to be a full morning routine or a perfectly planned hour. All it needs is intention. A short, quiet pause in your day that reminds you who you are, what matters, and where your center lives. Whether it's writing a single sentence in a journal, taking a 10-minute walk without your phone, lighting a candle while you breathe deeply, or simply drinking a glass of water in silence, what matters is the consistency, not the complexity. This kind of ritual rewires your nervous system. It tells your mind that calm is your baseline, not chaos. It gives your emotions space to settle before they spill into your decisions. And over time, it becomes a place you return to not just out of habit, but out of need. Especially when life gets heavy. Especially when you feel lost. That small practice becomes your form of emotional resilience, subtle but unshakable. The reason so many people feel mentally scattered or emotionally fragile is not because they're weak. It's because they start every day already reacting. Emails, notifications, expectations. And in the middle of that noise, their energy gets hijacked before they even realize it. But when you build a daily ritual, something intentional, consistent, and inward, you create a pause that protects your clarity. It trains your mind to respond instead of react, and it builds the kind of emotional control that doesn't depend on outside conditions. Try this. Choose 10 minutes in your day, morning or night. Make it a non-negotiable space. No scrolling, no explaining, no reacting. Pick one small action and make it yours. Let it become sacred, not because it's fancy, but because it's yours. Because you chose it, you honored it, and through it, you honored yourself. Quiet rituals don't shout, but they shape you. They deepen your emotional resilience. They reinforce your self-mastery. And most of all, they remind you that even when the world is loud, your peace doesn't have to be missing. It's always close. It just needs a door to come through. That door is built by repetition. One breath, one pause, one day at a time. If you want inner strength that lasts, don't chase more noise. Create more stillness. Let your ritual be your reset. Let it be your reminder. Let it be your return. Because the person who grounds themselves daily is the one who stays steady no matter what comes. Every lesson you just heard wasn't designed to make life easier. It was designed to make you stronger. Not louder, but clearer. Not harder, but deeper. In a world that moves fast and demands reaction, the ability to pause, reflect, and build emotional resilience is a quiet superpower. When you choose inner peace over approval, clarity over chaos, and grounded confidence over fear, you're no longer just surviving, you're growing. So if any part of this spoke to you, take a moment and share your story in the comments. What lesson hit home the most? What habit are you working on to build quiet strength? Your experience may be the exact reminder someone else needs today. And if this video gave you even one insight worth holding on to, don't forget to like it. It helps others find this message too. Subscribe for more timeless reflections that will help you build mental clarity, emotional control, and unshakable strength from within. Growth isn't always visible, but with the right mindset, it's always possible. Keep showing up for yourself, silently, steadily, and with intention. That's where the real power begins.